Hello everybody and welcome. It's Hugh here at Loxon and I'm here with our config solution video. So earlier today, for anyone that joined me live, I gave a swimming pool monitoring challenge and we are now going to cover how we solve that. So just as a reminder, all of our config challenges can be found on the following page here. You can see all of our previous challenges, our current challenge, and the links to join them live. So what our challenge was today was a little bit different in that I gave you the user story, but I didn't give you the hardware that we were going to solve it with. I let you figure that out for yourselves. So our user story is we're a homeowner and a parent and we're building a pool onto the side of our house, indoor pool, onto our Loxon house. We've got 2 young children. The pool has a single entrance, which is an open archway, no door in it. And we want to know when the child has entered on their own without an adult. And if they do, we want to be notified of it. And in the details, I haven't specified any Loxon hardware to do this. I've just said we have a few possible criteria that we can consider. We can use one of those, more than one of those, or none of those, and something to your heart's content, and then let you figure it out for yourself. Now, there are, of course, many ways that we can solve this. We could have some kind of detector that recognizes when the adult's phone has walked under the archway and then triggers this to reset or whatever we want it to do. That, of course, works on the principle that the parents always have their phones with them, which if they're going to the pool, they may well not. We could use a key fob and fob in and out if we wanted to. We could do, as somebody suggested, an implantable chip into the kids so that we know when they've entered the area without a parent. There are loads and loads of ways we could do this. We could use a pressure sensor under the floor and try and detect the difference in weight between a parent and a child. All of these are there, they're possible. They could probably work, but they wouldn't be infallible. Now, the thing I should probably point out is nothing will be infallible other than being a parent and using your own 2 eyes. So, of course, this isn't a substitute to parenting, but we want to try and make this as infallible as possible. And to me, out of all the criteria, the one that is most infallible is height. The reason for this is anybody can be slender or anybody could be rotund, but heights work out quite well as a law of averages. For instance, I did some research on this using my good friend Google. The average 7-year-old is 121 centimeters. The average 8-year-old is about 126 centimeters. The average 12-year-old, so about the age at which they would stop needing parental guidance, maybe, I don't know, I'm not a parent. The average 12-year-old is 147 centimeters, and the average adult woman is 164 centimeters. So we've actually got quite a nice set of tolerances to play with, because between the 12-year-old height and the average adult woman height, we've got a nice 17 centimeter difference. And if you get a ruler out, that's actually quite a decent amount of difference in height. Even when you get up to the average 13 and 14-year-old, you're still a good 8, 9, 10 centimeters off the average adult woman's height. 164.4 centimeters, the average adult woman. For any of you using imperial, that is 5'4". It's the average adult woman's height. And so what we essentially want is we want something that can detect difference in height between an adult and a child. And again, loads and loads of different products we could use for this. My preference would be something along the lines of this. So it goes under different names, could be a beam detector, a laser detector, photoelectric detector. Essentially, they're all different names for the same thing. It is a sensor that sends out a laser beam to a reflector on the other side that then reflects that beam back into the sensor part of here. And if it doesn't get the reflection back, it triggers an output. Dead simple. So I would have 2 of these. I would have one low level for the children, one high level for the adults. These you can also very nicely flush in as well so that you are pretty much not seeing them at all. Now, the low level detector. There's a couple of considerations to make for that. Firstly, it wants to be above child jump height, so that the 7-year-olds, as they're running along, can't just jump and hop over the lower beam. It has to be able to hit them if they jump. And secondly, if I have any pets who are strong, confident swimmers, I probably don't care about them going into the pool, other than the fact that they would be obviously swimming in the pool. And I can tell you that the most popular dog for families is a Labrador, and the average Labrador height is 60 centimeters. So again, it plays perfectly. We could install this sensor quite happily at 70, 80, 90 centimeters. It would still catch our youngsters, but it wouldn't catch the family dog or cat. So now that we've got that out of the way, we have one sensor at like 70, 80 centimeters for the kids, and then a higher up sensor that would probably be just a tad under the average adult female height of maybe 160 centimeters. So your kids are going to trigger this right up until the point they reach probably about 14 years of age on average, unless they're tall for their age, which is perfect because that means that this solution will also grow with them. So that when they're at the point where you don't care about an alert anymore, it automatically won't alert you with no reconfiguration required. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's move over to our config file. So we are obviously going to be using two digital inputs. One digital input is going to be our low-level sensor. And the other digital input is going to be our high-level sensor. I'm obviously going to need both of them. Now, I've seen a few people's configs that have come through with different ways of doing this, with things like flip-flops, with reset being dominant. It's actually what I first looked at using for this, and then I decided not to. I've seen other people use AND blocks, loads and loads of different ways. And in my mind, to most efficiently do this, I want to make sure that it doesn't trigger falsely, because boy who cried wolf, if this keeps going off unnecessarily, your parents are going to start ignoring it, or they're just going to be nervous wrecks the entire time. So I want to make sure that if the child walks into the pool area first, that it doesn't just automatically signal the alarm, because I'm sure if I had children and I had a pool and I finally relented and said, fine, you can go swimming today, and we were walking towards the pool, I'm sure that they would hair it off and they would run through that archway well before I did, and I would be playing catch up. And so I would want to make sure that even if they did set off that lower beam, that there was a period of time in which that I could walk through after them before it triggered the notification or the alarm, and also in the reverse that I could walk through before them. So I want there to be a time element as well. And so before I get into the nitty gritty, we've already looked at one function block several times before that contains a time element, a maintenance counter. Because with a maintenance counter, you can count down, and once you reach the end of your countdown, it activates the output queue. So I don't want to see this maintenance counter in the app, and I want the maintenance interval to be the time period in which I want for the kids to be able to go through with me following in heels. So hours, minutes, seconds. So it's probably going to be in a matter of seconds, because I'm sure that they could do a lot of damage in a short space of time. So I'll probably want it to be something like 15, 20 seconds. So I've got that amount of time to follow after them. Let's say 15 seconds. So that's one part of it. The maintenance counter has an input for counter activation. As long as that input is held, it starts counting down. I can do AQR, which shows the countdown. And then we have two other inputs, R and RA, for a reset or a total reset. I'm going to use the total reset. Now, if we're only walking through this archway, this sensor is just going to pulse. It's going to be momentary. So we want to take that momentary signal and we want to extend it. Easiest way to do this would be with something like a switch off delay. Now, we could get really, really clever, and we could say that both the the low level and not the high level have to be activated for this output to go off. And we could then do the reverse of both of them have to be active to reset. And we could end up with about 6 function blocks on our page. But I think that's a little bit overkill, because in my mind, a parent is always going to set off both sensors. a child will only set off the low level sensor. So I want when just that low level sensor activates, regardless of what the high level sensor is doing, I want it to start counting down on EN. So I'm going to put on a switch off delay. And then that switch off delay is going to be longer than the maintenance interval here by maybe a second. And it is going to go into EN. The reason for this is, if I show you in simulation, if they were to, and I'll just change the simulation view of this to a push button. The reason being is because when they break that beam, it's just going to pulse. And now that it's pulsed, you can see that that output has gone on and it's holding on, which means that the counter is counting set within that 15-second period. This output will go on. There we go, output's on, wonderful. Now, the reason why I don't care about tying both of them into EN and both of them into RA is because reset is dominant. And because reset is dominant, it means that it doesn't matter if both beams go off at the same time. So all I then need is another switch off delay with a slightly longer timeout than the one for the low level sensor. So maybe 18 or 19 seconds that my high level sensor is in. And that one is my reset. That's it, done. I'll then take whatever I want as my output. So it could be, for instance, a push notification to say that kids are in the pool with a few exclamation marks on it. It could be an alarm siren. It could be lights flashing. It could be whatever I wanted it to be. But that is my config. And I'm going to save it in, and I'm going to show you it working to prove that it works and that it's not just me telling porkies. So now that that's saved in, let's start live view. You can see at the moment, because there's no activation on EN, this is off and the countdown is at 15. Now, input 1 on my demo case is my low level sensor. So as I said, what's probably going to happen is the kids are going to tear off in front of me, which means that they're going to break that low level sensor. And you can see it started counting down. Then a few seconds after them, let's say 5, 6, 10 seconds, whatever, I walk in after them and I'm going to trigger both sensors. And you can see that because reset is dominant, it has reset this back to 15 seconds and the output has stayed off. And because this switch off delay is slightly longer than this one is going to turn off first. There we go. Whereas this one is going to stay on for an extra couple of seconds. So in all of that period of time, my notification has not activated, which is correct. Kids walking in, me following shortly after, does not trigger a push notification because then it would be going off unnecessarily all of the time. On the reverse of that, there are a few other scenarios that could be possible. The next scenario that could be possible would be that I walk in first and then the kids follow after me. So again, let's take a look at that. So I walk in first, so activate both of the brake sensors. And then a few seconds later, let's say 5 or 6 seconds later, kids follow me. And what you'll see is now this switch off delay will stay on longer than this one, and therefore it will start counting down. But because it's got that 15-second countdown, it's still not going to turn Q on. So you can see there, it counted down 4 seconds, but there's still another 11 seconds to go. So even if we're now leaving the pool, kids go first, and so they walk through first and they trigger and it starts counting down again. As long as within those 11 seconds, I follow them, it resets my maintenance counter. And this config here works. I've tested it in every scenario I can think of. So parent number 1 walking in, followed by child, followed by parent number 2. Parent number 2 then leaves, then child leaves, then parent number 1 leaves. I think the only scenario that this could not work would be if both of them have gone into the swimming pool area and then only the child leaves and the parent stays behind. That is the only scenario in which this will still count down and it will then obviously activate. But as long as you know that as a parent, you just make sure that you quickly break the beam to reset it. And as I said, nothing can be infallible. The key is to make it as infallible as possible. Wonderful. Hope you have enjoyed this little config video. As always, please keep joining us for all of the other ones. And if you would like to go back on any of our previous ones, how they work, and look at the config files, please feel free. Thank you very much. And I will see you again next time. Goodbye.